We are going to finish off today's show talking to David Moss. He's the general manager at the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. Going back a couple months, there has been some stories, some rumors, some discussions out there on what exactly has happened with Canada's BSE status. And so I wanted to connect with David Moss and get some insight from the perspective of CCA and Canada's BSE status as it applies to the international standard. Here's my conversation with David Moss. And David, how's it going?
Very good. Thank you, Sean.
Great to chat. Did you have a good NCBA?
It was always nice to see our friends in the U.S. We have very close relationships with those guys, and it's a valued discussion that we have on both sides of that border down there.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. and a lot of Mexican officials there, too. And
exactly.
I saw some Brazilians were in my hotel.
New Zealanders, Australia, you bet.
It's definitely a global convention for sure. Hey, I want to talk about BSE status today.
Okay.
There has been reports in terms of where Canada's at with our BSE status. Can you elaborate on what our current status is?
So right now we have controlled risk status as defined by OIE. The level, I guess, above that or below that, however you want to describe that, would be negligible risk.
And so that's what we're trying to get to.
That's what we're trying to get to. The U.S. has that status, and we're 11 years now from the last case allows us to make that application. So we're heading into that process right now.
Okay, so it's been reported recently that there was some sort of Canada had a deadline got away from them, and basically now we're waiting until July to reapply for that negligible status. That's correct?
Yep. By theory, we could have made application in July of 2020. We'll make application, July of 19. We'll make application July of 2020. That goes through the OIC process that they have. March of 2021, they'll render decision, and then May they have their big conference where they then put that announcement out.
Can you elaborate at all on the why of why we're at this point in terms of that deadline and having to wait another year?
You know, I think it's internal to CFIA. I think they have their processes in place and the needing to get to where they needed to get the right information together. One of the challenges we do have, Sean, is we have a different way of managing meat and bone meal here in North America than the Europeans do. And so OIE, of course, is populated with a lot of Europeans in terms of the committees and the committees that render these decisions. So part of it is having to make a case, a narrative, if you will, in terms of what we do in North America and how it's safe and how it's a proven and scientific approach to managing meat and bone meal. It's just different than what the Europeans do. And so you have to, I think, build a stronger case here for our systems than normally would be the case of Europeans. So that takes a little bit more time.
If we move from controlled to negligible,
correct,
what does that mean for us?
Well, a few things. One is SRM removal. So that allows us then to go down the path of specified risk material, SRM, to make application with CFIA to reduce the level of trim that an animal has to have. And that, of course, that's money, and that makes us more competitive with the U.S. We've seen a lot of our culled animals heading to the U.S. just because they have a more competitive price because they don't have to trim as much as we do up here. So that's number one. Number two is access into some of our foreign markets. South Korea, for example, is still being held at bay somewhat by the fact that we have deterred is a good term, that we have this negligible, or we have controlled and we need negligible.
Because that was going to be one of my questions as far as if we are able to move in this status 11 years after the fact. I think the hangover of 03 still
lingers.
It still lingers.
Yeah.
I was having this conversation with the Canadian Pork Council earlier today.
Yeah.
In regards to ASF, that if ASF was ever to hit our shores, it's not just there's ripple effects that last a very, very long time, and to be very cognizant. I'm not saying there haven't been cognizant, but it's just I think there's a lot of similarities because we lost, especially in the cow-calf sector. We still haven't recovered from a cow herd standpoint.
No, and keep in mind, though, that cow herd went up exponentially because of BSE. So you got to measure where you take that measurement of cow herd size. Yeah. Right? Before BSE is probably a better proxy of herd size than 2 years after BSE. But your point's well taken. The challenge that we always have, there's a consumer aspect to all this, right? And especially in other countries that you're importing to. So you can have the science, you can have the policies and regulations, but then you also have that non-tariff, the political environment that will weigh in on when you get access. It shouldn't, but it does.
Yeah. Is there? Is Canada's case to move to negligible? Is it a positive one? Like, is there anything that stands in our way?
Yeah, and don't quote me on these facts, but I think if I hear correctly, there's been 3 cases of BSE globally in the last 3 years. This is a disease that truly is on its downturn, right? We've done the systems around the world to manage and control and mitigate this disease. So that's part of that narrative that we need to get across to OIU and make application is let's keep this in context. We may have a different system and methodology of managing our meat and bone meal than Europeans do, but it still works. We haven't had a case in now 11 years, right?
I would imagine it makes things a little bit simpler, too, for the North American. We both just came off of NCBA, but I would think that the Americans and Mexicans would they would see our move to negligible as a positive step because it really allows us to be in line from a North American beef chain.
That's right. And again, it goes back to that consumer narrative, right? So that we've sitting here across North America having this perceived and real safe product to consume. I mean, it's a good news story that consumers, I think, would embrace.
Who governs our status?
The OIE. Yeah.
Okay, so what is that?
Yeah. I wish you hadn't asked me that. It's French pronunciation. You can look it up here. I'm sure you're doing that madly as we talk.
I am. It's just, and why does that, I guess, in some of these cases, like it seems so, why does that matter? Like, is it because that's what countries rely on as a regulatory body to define the foods, like from a food safety standpoint?
It's an international status or standard that we all are tuned to. So it is, you got to have some benchmark to work from. So yeah, it is something that we all listen to and utilize.
Okay. Well, David, thanks a lot. I appreciate you elaborating on the situation and look forward to that application being filed and us getting past this.
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to add as well. In terms of the application itself, we'll give full credit to CFIA. We're working with them collectively as a working group. So we sit there, we co-chair that. All industry sectors that are involved with this application are digging in and providing the information and the data that we need to make that application. So it's been a team effort, and I've been really impressed with everybody helping out like they have.
Okay, David, really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.